Happy Sabbath, everyone. We hope that you've had the opportunity to get some fresh air today and that you have been able to enjoy the beautiful weather that God has given us. Let us open with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, God, thank you so much for being such a wonderful God. Lord, thank you for protecting us from harm and from danger. We thank you so much just for the beautiful weather that you've given us today. Lord, we thank you so much that despite the technical difficulties that we had today, we were able to get a wonderful message sent from you through Pastor Harrigan. Lord, please bless us as we go through this evening program. Lord, help that we can have no flaws with technology, and we pray that you bless the message that will be coming through this evening. We thank you and we praise you for who you are. In your name I pray. Amen. So today's topic of discussion is personal finance. We know that God has called us to be good stewards of our finances. The Word of God says in Proverbs 21, verse 20, a wise man saves for the future. But what does that look like practically today? We have a very special guest who will delve into this topic. Her name is Thea Ellis, and she is one of the beautiful daughters of brother and sister Ellis. A confident speaker with wisdom beyond, she will help us to get a handle on money principles and help us to become the stewards that God has called us to be. After this musical selection, the next voice that you will hear is that of Thea Ellis.
Hi, Carolyn, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Well, happy Sabbath to everyone out there today. I'm on the West Coast, so it's still before sundown for me. I'm going to try to share my screen, but want to see if I'll have permissions to do so, and it looks like I will. So you're going to see my beautiful parents for potentially 2 seconds. Okay, and Carolyn, I'm going to look to you to confirm that you can see the presentation that has the Lebanon SDA logo on it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll jump right in. Good evening, everyone.
Wait a minute. Okay. Sorry. Let me do one thing.
If you're speaking to me, Carolyn, I can't quite hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask David if you can give the sharing permissions. I think it was done already, but.
So to confirm, you don't see my screen. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
I'm seeing it right now.
No worries.
Okay, it says you've started screen sharing and we're just waiting for it to pop up.
Okay, let's see what's happening then on my side. Perhaps I do have multiple screens, so let's see. Let's try this one more time.
Okay.
Okay, do you see a screen now that says virtual personal finance?
Yes, I do.
All right, terrific. This is already progress. Fantastic. All right, terrific. Well, thank you all for inviting me to join today. I do feel very much part of the Lebanon SDA family. When I come to visit my parents in New York, you guys always welcome your doors and open your doors to me and my sister and brother and nieces, etc., to be part of your family. So I'm very, very honored to be here with you guys today. And so just for some of you who may not have had the opportunity to meet me when I've joined, I am Thea Ellis, as Carolyn mentioned in the very, very kind introduction. As she stated, I am the youngest daughter of brother and sister Ellis. Just a little bit more background about me. I received my BA from Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. But I also went on to go get an MBA from Northwestern's.
That's such a terrible place to stop.
In business management and strategy.
Yeah.
Hi, Carolyn, would you mind? Perfect. Okay, terrific. So
it just starts with her like saying.
I'm going to try to put her on mute, but I guess we may have lost Carolyn. There we go. Okay, she's on mute now. Thank you so much. So as I mentioned, I got my bachelor's degree at Dartmouth and got my MBA at Northwestern Kellogg School of Management, where I focused on business management and strategy. Presently, I'm a business development executive. I actually just started a new role at a telecom wireless company, a national service. And I negotiate deals essentially with big media conglomerates, specifically for television rights. And so if you love watching shows like ESPN or networks like ESPN or shows like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, I'm part of a team that negotiates those rights for you to be able to watch those things if you're on my particular television service. But I will say, although I do manage a lot of economics for business and big companies, I am not a financial professional. So this is just me really sharing and being part of the Lebanon family and sharing some of the insights and lessons that I've learned over the years. But I really encourage everyone that's part of this Zoom session today to really seek the counsel of a financial professional. And what I'm really hoping to do is really kind of demystify the process so that everyone just gets engaged and gets started. So really the agenda today, I wanted to cover 3 big items. One is what I like to call the basics. What do you need to know about your money? The other pieces is just giving a bit of insight about key purchases that one may make things like a car or a home, really just kind of giving folks a little bit more guidelines on how you should be thinking about those things. And the last piece here is just your credit score. And the latter two will probably be more of the last piece of the full presentation, but definitely wanted to tap into those items because I think they're important. So jumping in, I think we're all obviously in very unprecedented times. I think COVID has really shook a lot of us. And to be very candid, there are a lot of medical professionals around the world and key policy leaders who really knew that a pandemic was imminent. But I will say, speaking for myself, this one really kind of caught me off guard. And it really kind of highlights a piece that we should always be mindful of in our lives, that there's just certain things that we can't predict, right? COVID is one of them. As a result of COVID, a lot of people have actually lost their jobs, their livelihoods, which is a tragedy on top of some of the health impairments that a lot of people have struggled with during this time. But again, health is a key thing that can come up, that can be something that's just really, really hard to plan for. Or things like you need a new roof on your house or your car breaks down. We really want to make sure that we have some good financial health to be able to deal with some of the things that you can't control. But there's also other parts of life that you can control, and it's part of your planning to really kind of have a full and comprehensive life, right? So that could be planning for an upcoming wedding or purchasing a house or going back to school and any of these other items. That's really, really important for you to be able to have those experiences as well. And money can really help make those things less stressful. But the key thing, whether it be for things that you can't plan for or things that you do plan for, you can't have your head in the sand. Just because you don't look at it on a day in and day out basis doesn't mean that it doesn't affect your life. And so the key thing that I really hope that everyone recognizes in getting started is really doing some good inventory and making a commitment to yourself that you will not bury your head in the sand. And so really kind of taking this budget mindset, which I like to call it, and again, I work very heavily in business and in dealing with business deals and the economics that come with running companies. It really is taking your own life and treating it like a business. And really, you are your business, so you should know your business. And there's some key things that you need to do to be able to really know your business. The first one I think is really important is just taking inventory of the money that is coming in, so your inflows, and the money that's going out, your outflows. If you don't know what's coming in and what's going out, you really can't even assess where you are in your financial priorities. And I'll go into some kind of key points about exactly how do you go about doing that and doing that in a very comprehensive way. The next thing is, once you're actually taking that exercise of knowing what your inflows and your outflows are, really looking for some improvements. And again, we can kind of talk a little bit more about how do you go through some of those elements. And then the last bit here is that it's not a one-time thing. If I take a business like Target, for example, that we all probably frequent quite often, or even Amazon, if you're getting a lot of Amazon purchases during this pandemic, the people who are running those businesses aren't looking at this once a year, right? They're looking at this on a weekly basis. They're constantly going back and assessing what their inflows and outflows are, right? What are the things how they make money, their revenue, and how do they manage their cost? And if a company that you are patronizing are doing that, you really should be doing that for yourself. So again, these are all the components of knowing your business. And it's important that you do that over and over and over again and really schedule time to ensure that you are meeting that commitment to yourself. So just want to give you guys a sample of how have I looked at this for myself in my own life. And it really is being pretty granular, right? Looking at your income. And sometimes, if you have a regular job, you have some predictability with what your income is. If you're on a salary, or even if you are an hourly employee, you kind of can predict when your hours are going to be. So you can really have a good sense about what that money is coming in. But even if you are self-employed, or you are a contractor, for example, it is still important to really be able to assess and know how much money is coming in the door and how much money should be coming in the door, right? To make sure that if you've done the work, you get the money, and not knowing what's coming in means you can't even really ensure that you're being compensated for the things in which the work you've already done. So again, starting with your income, how much money is coming in, whether that be from your regular job, whether that be from a side hustle, or just miscellaneous ad hoc things. Someone asks you to look at something and they pay you for it. Again, you want to know what's coming in. When it comes to your expenses, you want to know what those things are too. And I'm saying be very, very granular. There's not an item of things that I pay for that I'm not making sure I'm tracking that. So I'm going to walk through this entire list in an effort to kind of really highlight how specific you wish to be. So how much are you paying for lodging, your housing, whether that be a mortgage or your rent? How much do you pay for your internet? We're all on a broadband connection right now, whether that be Comcast, Charter, or whomever. How much do you pay on a monthly basis for that service? What's your home insurance or your rental insurance? How much money are you putting into your savings? And this is a key one. I put this as an expense because I do treat the money that I put in my savings as an expense. I am paying myself first. In the same way that I want to make sure that I am making a commitment to pay my internet service provider on time and do that religiously, I should also be doing that for myself. So I do list my own savings as an expense. What my mobile provider, if you have AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, that should be something that you're adding to your list. Do you go to the gym? If you are in New York City, public transportation can be a huge expense if you're getting from Queens to Brooklyn or Brooklyn to Manhattan. On the weekends, you may, have your car to go to and from church or go to your grocery. So really be mindful of how much gas you need and really making a budget and a commitment for that. Again, investment deposits. This is a very much like savings. I consider this an expense. Your TV service, your car note, your groceries, any entertainment services like Netflix or Disney Plus, what your credit cards are. If you love to go out typically to a movie pre-COVID, or a restaurant, how much are you really allotting for entertainment on a monthly basis? Your ties, your charitable donations, really making a commitment and ensuring that you're adding that to your expense profile because it's important. Your property taxes, if you own a home, if you live in a condo, what are your homeowners association fees? And if you have a car on an annual basis, you need to have your car registration. So really highlighting, and I'm going to be as exhaustive as possible on this stuff because again, knowing what is going out is just as important as knowing what's coming in to be able to really ensure that you are being eyes wide open and not having your head in the sand when it comes to your economic profile. And so once you've done this and you really have a good inventory about what your financial profile looks like, some of the questions you should be asking yourself, and these are just a handful to get people started. But I think once you start going, you can be really, really honest with yourself and a lot of the questions will come and flow from this. But the first thing too, it's like, are my outflows, are my expenses greater than the amount of money that I have coming in? And if that is really the case, you should be mindful of, how can you change that balance? Can you reduce some of your bills or can you increase your income? And it really goes to the next question. I think that one of the areas to be mindful of mitigating the amount of outflows you have specifically is looking at recurring bills. When I did this for real, the first time when I really said, okay, I need to get my financials in order, I looked at something like my car insurance and I was at Allstate at the time. And I actually went and called Geico and the General and Progressive and all the commercials that you see and call and, competitively shop. And in doing that, I was able to save $50 on a monthly basis to be able to really reduce what my cost expenditure was. And so those things are really, really important. And your recurring bills in particular, the things that you have to pay every single month, create a lot of opportunity for you to be able to reduce your expense. When it comes to your housing, a good barometer that a lot of financial professionals provide is your housing more than 30% of your gross income? If it is, really question, whether or not that's something that's a requirement. I'm in Los Angeles, you guys are in New York. These are really, really expensive cities. But there could be an opportunity for you to say, do I have a 2-bedroom place just so that when my mom comes to visit me twice a year, she has a place to stay? Is that really worth your monthly investment as opposed to downsizing? And maybe when your mom comes, you get a really, really nice hotel room. And so really just being mindful of those kinds of decisions and really seeing if there's a way for you to reduce that expense. Another one, a lot of people have student loans. Do you have loans that you have not refinanced? And do you have other loans that may just be interest-only loans? And so really thinking about ways to kind of change the way in which you're making repayments on those things and ensuring that you are maximizing the benefits of some opportunities out there to, again, be able to reduce your expense. And then another piece, a big piece, which I think, a lot of people, it's easy for it to get out of hand, but really, are you carrying a large credit card debt? And if you are, how do you make sure that you are maximizing some of the opportunities out there? Like you oftentimes get, offers in the mail for 0% balance transfers for a specific amount of time. Is there a way for you to strategically apply for those things to be able to really bring that debt down without having to pay interest on it in an effort, again, to try to improve your financial performance? So these are just some sample questions about once you have everything down, paper and pen or Excel spreadsheet or mint.com, whatever resource you want to use that's going to really track your inflows and your outflows, what are the questions you then ask yourself to make sure that you're in good health? And so that's the first stage of things, but you really want to be mindful if you're doing all this stuff to really kind of highlight, I think, some key financial tenets and goals here. The first one is exactly where we started, right? Is really making sure that you have an emergency fund. And I think, depending on where you are in your career, it can take you anywhere from 3 to 9 months to find a job if you were to lose yours. And so you really want to make sure that you have money set aside for that rainy day. And so this emergency fund is really, really critical for that. I think it's very prudent for people to have at least up to 9 months of your monthly expenses covered, in an emergency fund. I know that that's a big ask and it could take you a number of years to be able to get there. But I think if COVID has shown us anything, it's that a lot of people didn't have, at least 2 months saved up, and how quickly it really meant that a lot of people weren't in dire straits. And so in the future, as you're prepping and thinking about what do you want to do if we find ourselves in these kinds of times, 5, 10, 15 years from now, really setting the intention here to create a pretty hefty expense fund. And a great way of doing this, again, is paying yourself first. And so really making sure that when you are bringing money in, how do you put that money aside? And savings accounts, there's a lot of variance on savings accounts. You can have your local savings account could give you an APR, an interest rate that could be 0.3%, which isn't really a huge churn, but there are some high yield savings accounts that are out there. And I mean, God bless the internet. It really does allow for us to be able to get a lot of information quite quickly and sign up for new accounts online. And so, Capital One has a high yield savings account that has an APR of 1.5%. Again, these numbers seem pretty paltry, but again, be a competitive shopper and really be able to set yourself up to be able to at least get the highest return you can, even with something like a savings account. The next item is you don't want to forget about your future, about tomorrow. And so if you are in a job that has a 401k, maximize that, especially if your company is matching your investments. And so that is, if your company is matching, that's free money and you should not be, passing on that. So really making sure that you're maximizing your investments at work with 401ks, et cetera. There are education savings account. If you have young kids that you want to really kind of invest in what their college education may be in the future. There are some pre-tax plans that you should look into to make sure that you are setting up your future, your kids, for the best place that they can be from an education perspective. There are things like health savings accounts. Again, health is part of the things that sometimes can be an unpredictable expense that may come up. Health savings accounts really do allow, depending on what your insurance plan is, allows for you to be able to have some pre-tax investment into those accounts so that if you need it on the back end, you can utilize them and save yourself on using basically pre-tax dollars as opposed to post-tax dollars. And another one that I had to put in bold because I think it's really, really easy for us to forget this stuff. And when you're in your 20s, you're probably not thinking about this, but when you're in your 30s plus, you really should be, especially as you're starting to gain assets, savings or otherwise, which is make sure you have a will. And if you have, a home or other investments that you wish, if something were to happen to you, and you don't want your family to have to go through probate court and hire attorneys, et cetera, you should look and really have a financial advisor as well as a lawyer work with you to be able to set up a trust. and really thinking about what those elements are. But you can't really forget about kind of future planning and how you wish to, potentially share your life's earnings with your family members or your church. And then the last bit here, which I think sometimes can be quite intimidating, and I don't think it should be, is invest. If you've already scheduled, you have your emergency fund, you're maxing out your 401k or your investment portfolio, there's a huge value in terms of really achieving a lot of wealth by virtue of investing in the stock market. And it's a long practice. There are ways to do it that are not scary. And that are relatively safe. Obviously, there's no way to guarantee that your money will earn a return. But the US stock market has had many, many years, almost 100 years of performance, and it's been a positive one. And I'll show you guys some graphs and give you guys my perspective, and hopefully in trying to demystify the stock market. And the other thing too, if you do have a 401k, you're already in the market. And so you've already kind of put in an investment. This is a way for you to be able to think about how do you maximize that. And the key things here that I think that are very easy and relatively safe and passive investing that you can do is buying into index funds or ETFs with your, the interest or the profits that you make or the dividends, that you make sure that you reinvest those to be able to get the good value of that. And a big point of that is really just kind of the compound interest benefits. And I'll kind of share a little bit more about that. So when we're thinking about finances, and again, we've now just kind of talked a bit about the basics of what it is that you need. There is a core principle of finance that everyone should be mindful of. And I'm sure you've all heard the term before, but it's an important one to kind of review. And this is just the concept of the time value of money. And what it basically means is that if I were to give you $100 today, that $100 today is worth more, and it should be worth more to you, but it really is worth more to you than if I were to give you that same $100 a year from now. And the core principle here is that the money, when you have it in hand today, can be used to earn money. So a year from now, that $100 will have actually been, with investment, been bigger than the $100 I would have given you a year later. And so that concept here is really, really important when you're talking about investments, when you're talking about, even when you're trying to get finance. These key tenets of finance, which are not only money, but time is a big element of things, and then interest. So how much do you intend to make on that money? Or how much do you intend to have to pay for that money? So these elements in terms of money, time, and kind of interest are really key tenets that everyone should be mindful of when you're thinking about your finances. And this is a big one when it comes to the whole idea of compounding interest. And so quite briefly, compounding of interest just basically means your interest earns interest. The money that you made, let's say, again, I give you the $100 and you have a 10% interest on that. The interest would give you $10. So if in a year you made 10% on the $100 I gave you, so you made $10 on that, a year from now, you would have had $110. Well, if you then get another 10% on that, it means in that next year, so year 2, you would have earned $11 because you would have had not only the original $10 investment, but the original $100 investment, but the $10 you earned in interest. And now together, you're going to be able to earn money on that total amount. So the interest earns interest, which earns interest, which earns interest. And so what that actually means is that, the time element of being able to get your money in early and allowing your money to earn interest and your interest to earn interest really works in your favor. So this example here, which I really love, is that if at 25 years old, you were to invest roughly $400 a month, so roughly $5,000 a year, let's say into the stock market, and you had a rate of return of 10%, and you put that $5,000 a year for 9 years into the market, making 10% year over year. The amount that you would have, and then you stopped in 9 years. So after the age of 34, you didn't put anything back in the market, and you kept your money in that market, you would have made roughly $800,000 by virtue of just the 9 years of investment and keeping that money with that average rate of return. However, if you were to start at 35, so roughly 10 years later, and did the exact same thing, but kept that money, a $5,000 investment for 30 years, what you would see is that you would actually have made less money in that time frame. And the real reason of that is time. So for anyone out there who's 20, 25, 30, you're never going to be younger than you are today. But really starting early works in your favor. And it's because you can't make up time. And if you are 40 or 50, the adage still holds for you. You're the youngest you'll ever be, but really recognizing that time is on your side when it comes to investing. And that, I hope, is one of the key lessons of why it's really important that you start today. Don't let another day pass without really thinking about these things and getting into it. The other item too, in terms of like thinking about how compounding interest can really work, if you look at the time element and where you put your money, and this is really talking about the interest part of it, this is the S&P 500, right? This is kind of deemed one of the best tools or indices that we use to see the performance of the US stock market. And it's been around since the 1920s. And so there's been a lot of tracking of data for almost 100 years. But this is what I just pulled this morning to kind of look at what the S&P performance has been starting from 1980 till yesterday. And you'll see it's an upward trajectory, pretty consistent, right? There are obviously times in which the market went down. And you can kind of guess that this was around the time of September 11th. And then you had to pull back up. And in 2008, we had the real estate crash where we expressed some recession, but it's been on a relatively steady trajectory. And as we're going to see, COVID is going to and has impacted this even in the more recent months, but the overall story is true. And so when you are thinking about investing your money long term, so not just kind of stock picking to try to make more money today than next year, but when you're really thinking about having your money be in the market for a long amount of time, and we've already spoken about why time is really, really important. The US stock market, if you believe in the US stock market, and I do think that this data now of 40 years should highlight why it's been a relatively good performer, getting in and really expecting that market to increase, if you trust what the stock market or the US economic profile looks like, this is a good reason why you should play in this market. And playing doesn't mean stock picking. It could just mean things like index funds, where you are kind of playing the market, broadly speaking. And so on average, again, the market has been giving a return of roughly 10%. That means on average, there could be some years where it's higher. There could be some years where it's lower. It could be even a loss of 30%. But on average, year over year, putting your money in the market has not been a bad move. So now I wanted to transition a little bit because one of the things that Carolyn had highlighted is that there are going to be people who are in various spaces of where their life stories are. Some of you may be in your early 20s. Some of you may be in your early 40s and et cetera. And there are going to be key purchases you have to make. And I love the example of buying a car, because it does highlight, I think, in a way that can be very granular. And a lot of people either have had this experience before or will have this experience. It really gives you a good sense about negotiation and also about the power of money. And so, again, the case we're talking about here is you're going in to buy a car. And typically, if you've ever done this, and I've now done this 3 times in my life, you have a car salesman, and after they give you all the pleasantries and they've like sized you up, the question that they're always going to ask you is, how much money do you want to pay per month and how much money do you have to put down? And it's so easy because you come in and you're like, okay, I've done my financial inventory. I know how much money is going in and how much money is going out and how much do I want to pay for a car on a monthly basis. It is far too easy to answer that question, but you should never answer that question. But if you do answer it, you may say, I want to pay $350 a month and I have $4,350 to put down. And the reason why I say you should not answer that question is because of the tenets we've talked about, right? You have cash in hand, you have time and interest. And those are all the key tenets when it comes to money. Giving him, he can actually, or she can give you what you asked for, right? Is put you in a car where your car note is $350 a month and you will put down roughly $4,000 today. And what that could look like is a car that could be $18,000, sticker price. with taxes and fees, and there are fees, and I should also highlight that the fees can be negotiable. Not all of them. If you have a state fees like New York State, they're not going to change some of those fees, but there can be some marketing fees that car salesmen and car dealerships will put in for advertising, etc. And those fees can be really, really high, and they are negotiable. That's my fees disclaimer for the moment. But long and short of it is, you have a price of a car for $18,000, and your total out the door expense on that car is a little less than $20,000. That you need financing. Again, you have $4,000 to put down, and you have relatively decent credit, so you can have an interest rate of a little over 5%. And the time of your loan will be 4 years, 48 months. That calculation with your down payment will give you the $350 car payment that you asked for. And if your car that you're buying is worth roughly $18,000 to $20,000, that's a good deal. Good job. You did an awesome play there. But the other thing that a dealer could do is put you in a car that actually is $30,000. And you can have the exact same interest rate because your credit is still the same. But instead of paying off that loan in roughly 4 years, it would take you 7.5 years to pay that off. And if your car, again, is worth the car that you're looking to purchase really has a valuation of $20,000, just focusing on how much you want to pay on a monthly basis could mean that you're paying anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 more than you should be. And so I hope it really kind of illustrates the fact that that question about what you want to pay on a monthly basis really highlights, or hides rather, what you should be focusing in on, which is, what is the total price of something? What is the value of something? And I really hope that when you go into your dealer the next time and someone were to say, how much do you want to pay on a monthly basis? You'd say, you know what, I'm still trying to figure out what may work for me, but I really am looking for this type of car. And for total price, this is about what it is I'm looking to spend. Because then you're really anchoring yourself on what the total price of the car is. You should already know what your interest rate is likely going to be. And then you have these other variables of time to be able to mitigate with. So I want to really break down, and I think it's probably going to be really helpful to really understand when you're thinking about for your, again, monthly inflows and outflows, what 350 may look like. Let's really break that down. So your monthly payment, again, as you think everyone here knows, is the $350 we talked about, or any amount, whether this be for a home, et cetera, is really the amount that you are going to be paying. So if it's a bank, if it's your credit union that you're borrowing money from, or wherever, or even the dealer, if you're financing directly from your dealership, it really is the amount of money that you are going to have to give up on a monthly basis to be able to pay for the item that you have in your possession. The principal payment is the money that actually goes down to pay down the total price of the car, right? The actual amount of the loan that you took out is probably better suited to say. And then the interest payment is part of your monthly payment that goes to the person or the entity that has loaned you the money. So it's the amount of money they make by virtue of giving you the courtesy of loaning you that money. And so going back to our example, if you have a car that's like $18,000 and you have a total price of $19,000, you put down the $4,000, right? So that kind of reduces what your principal payment is. That $350 that you're paying on a monthly basis, $255 of that are going to go to paying down your loan. So roughly the $15,000 net, the deposit you put down in the car, that $255 every month is going to be paying down that amount over time. And the $95, you'll never, it doesn't really kind of pay down your loan. It doesn't pay down your loan at all. That's the money that again goes to the entity that loaned you the money. It's the benefit that they get on a monthly basis for having loaned you this money. If you were to go the option of having a car that had an inflated price, that $350, only $183 is going to go to your principal of paying down that amount. And then the $166 is going to go for your interest. And so these are the elements in terms of why time matters here, because you have a longer period of time. So your interest is going to be higher, at the outset, and it will decrease over time as your principal goes down. But again, this is really about being mindful about all the different components here and why you should really be thinking about making the most amount of money go to your principal to be able to get rid of that debt in a time frame that works for you. So now just kind of going into the checklist of, we're using the example of a car, again, just simply as an example, but I think it's something that you should be really considering whenever you're looking to finance any economic value of an item that you need. And the first thing here, I think we talked about this quite briefly, even in the car example, your interest rate is something that you shouldn't go into any kind of environment not knowing what that is at the outset, if it at all can be avoided, right? And so, you want to buy a car, get some pre-approvals. It doesn't mean that you have to lock in what that interest is, but if nothing else, it gives you something to go into the dealer with to be able to be like, I've already been approved for a loan of 5%. Can you beat it? And if they can beat it, then you actually have something as leverage for them to try to outperform what you've already come in through the door with. And the same is true if you're purchasing a home, like really being able to, in a short amount of time, and you don't want to do this like, oh, I'm going to buy a car, let me look this up, and I'm not really ready to buy the car for 6 months. Don't get a pre-approval until you're ready to actually act on it. But if you're looking to buy a home, you can do competitive shopping. Get Bank of America, get someone else, Citibank or whomever, to give you a pre-approval, and you'll have those things to be able to have as leverage to work against one another and hopefully get the best interest rate that you can. The next bit here, again, it's like you should always be looking to pay fair market value for things. And so, if you could get a burger at McDonald's for $3 at one particular franchisee, you wouldn't pay 10 at another franchisee for the exact same item. And so when you go into a dealership or when you are looking to purchase a home, you really want to do your research. It shouldn't be something that you just go in thinking like, I'm going to just do this today. There are a lot of tools that you are able to, again, be able to assess what the fair market value of something is. In the example of a car, there's the Kelley Blue Book. That's Kelley, for you to be able to say, what's the year of the car that I'm looking to purchase? What are the particular details? And in your region, they can give you a lot of data about what is the fair market value for that car, if it is fair condition, if it's in good condition, or if it's in excellent condition. So you should really be going into any conversation armed with information. Information is key to having a really, really good and successful negotiation. And so you should do that research in advance. Also, when you're looking to purchase a home, how are other homes in the area selling? Again, it's about really kind of thinking about what is that from a location perspective. What is the price per square footage? Are you paying higher on a price per square footage of a home than other homes that have recently sold in that same space? These are all things you can do from the comfort of your home and really being informed in advance to making such a huge investment. And again, this is about knowing your business and really representing yourself. So taking the time to do that. I think it's also important that we be mindful that not all assets are created equal, right? We're talking about the difference between buying a car or purchasing a home. Purchasing a home, for the most part, I think we've seen 2008 probably being a brief exception, but historically, your home is an asset that is going to appreciate over time. Your expectation is that when you buy it, you will likely sell it for much higher than what it was that you purchased it for and earn a return on that investment. On a car, it's a depreciating asset. So when you buy it today, if you were to sell it 5 years from now, you're going to sell it for less than what you bought it for. And so it's just really important to be mindful and take a lot of the emotion out of the conversation and really just say, what am I buying? And especially with cars, I think it's so easy to be like, I want a BMW, I want something that's really, really flashy. But at the end of the day, you want something that is going to get you from point A to point B. And really think about, is it really important for you to have the flashiest of cars? Or is it important for you to have that money to be able to invest in the market or to be able to put towards your emergency fund that we talked about previously? Really being really honest about what is important to you is really key. And I know that may be a hard thing to hear people when you're younger. But again, you making a decision to put more money that could be an additional $200 or $300 or $400 into an asset that you know is going to depreciate. So you're going to sell it for less than you bought it for and have higher expenses in terms of maintenance of that car or insurance for that car, is all money that you are putting to something that you're probably not going to get your return on the same way that you would if you just invested in an index fund. And time is on your side now than what it would be if you were to then make that a different decision 10 years from now. So again, you know, we all need to make the decisions that feel good for us at the times in which they do, but it's really important that you really keep in mind what assets you are acquiring and how you view them, and being really honest about that. Another thing too is I have some spreadsheets, spreadsheet that I've used again when I'm purchasing a car. I've shared it with a lot of my friends to help you do some of that analysis, to be able to say, okay, what's the value of the car? What's my interest rate? How many years do I want to have on this loan? And it spits out all this information in advance so that you can kind of get a good sense as to how much car can you afford, and how long is your tolerance for being able to pay a loan off. So I can share that with Carolyn to distribute to the team if you guys find that of value. And I have a very similar one for mortgages as well, with some assumptions about what your monthly insurance may be or what your property taxes may be. It changes obviously from state to state, but at least it gives you some kind of tool to begin to wrap your head around that. And if that's helpful, I'm happy to share it. Again, there are various things when it comes to home purchases that we should just be mindful of. Obviously, there's the down payment. You know, if you are going to put 20% down, fine. If not, be mindful of PMIs. And there are a lot of programs out there in terms of if you're a first-time home buyer, really do a lot of research and investigations about making sure that, again, you are representing your business properly and that you are not leaving any money on the table, literally or figuratively. Really trying to make an assessment about what your home insurance costs will be, what your property taxes are. There are benefits like the Homestead Act, if it's your primary home, making sure that you have an awareness about what that declaration may be in terms of how your property taxes may change year over year. What your tax write-offs are. You have a home that is past a certain limit. I think it's maybe for federal government, $750,000. Like, what is there a cap on how much of that interest you can actually write off? Again, just being really informed about what you are signing yourself up for, and talk to people. There are a lot of people in your area who have done this before. There are people in your lives who have done this before, and really getting their insight and learning from them. What mistakes have other people have made? And I hate calling them mistakes because it's like, what lessons have other people learned that they can impart onto you? But the reality is, how do you demystify all of this? Don't be stressed about, oh my gosh, there's all these things I don't know. You will learn over time. And there are very few things, if you are informed and you take a very kind of diligent approach to your finances, I think there are very few detrimental mistakes you can make. But there are a lot of opportunities for you to learn and impart that to your church family and others to be able to be of service. So the other item that, again, as I promised at the outset, that I did want to briefly give an overview on, specifically for some of our younger friends here, is just your credit, right? We're talking about things, we've been talking about cash, time, and interest. And a big part of what your interest rate will be, specifically when you are looking to finance purchases, whether that be a car, a home, or other items, or your education, is your interest rate and it's your credit score. And there are 3 credit bureaus that are leading in the country: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And they are, pretty great about tracking what your credit, your financial profile looks like, specifically with, do you pay your bills on time? Have you looked to get a line of credit? But we should also be mindful of that. While they do a good job, sometimes things on your credit report are just wrong. And so it really is, again, I hope another adage here that you guys get on a key lesson here is, do not put your head in the sand. And if these organizations are really tasked with watching and managing how you spend your money, or how responsible you are with your credit, they're looking, you should be looking and managing that for yourself, and also checking them. And Equifax, I think probably in the last 18 to 24 months, but fairly recently, they had a hacking, and it's just part of the times that we're in, that we just need to be mindful of. Even some of these really, really trusted agencies have fallen victim to hacks. And so it just really speaks to being really, really diligent about your financial profile, not only what you manage in your home, but how things are being reported about you to various industries. And, when it comes to how do you manage that, again, the first one is pay your bills on time. And right now with COVID, it's really, really hard for a lot of people who have lost their employment or lost their income, or their income has slowed. And this is just a reality of life. Sometimes we experience some really, really great peaks, and sometimes we find ourselves in the valley. But I do think that when you think about your lines of credit or your utility bills or any kind of economic exchange, it's all about communication. If you know that you're going to find a hard time paying, call them in advance. It's always a different conversation to say, I'm falling on some hard times and my payment is going to be late, or can we talk about a different payment plan? They're going to be more responsive to you, I think, in advance of there being a delinquency than after. The other important thing to be mindful of in conjunction with what we've been talking about with these 3 credit agencies, your delinquencies on your credit can last on your report for 7 years. And so you really want to be very mindful of trying to address these items before they hit your report. And so you just want to be very mindful of that. The other item too is that these agencies track how many times you inquire or get a new line of credit. And so when you do an inquiry, let's say you were to try to get a new car and you want to have your line of credit run to see what your credit score will be and what your interest is for such a purchase, for a pre-approval, for example. If you do inquiries, they remain on your report for 2 years. And so is it a big ding? No, but you want to be really, really mindful about, how and when you do those kinds of things, and making sure that it is timely around the time in which you intend to make a purchase or an investment decision. The other item here is keeping your credit utilization ratios low, specifically on revolving credit cards, for example. And so what does that actually mean in terms of credit utilization? So when you have a credit card, for example, they're going to issue you a line of credit. And let's just say that line of credit is $10,000. You can, swipe that card up into $10,000. And after that, then you've maxed out, you've hit your limit. Your utilization, so your credit limit is your denominator. Your numerator in that calculation is the amount of that credit you utilized. And so if you have used, spent $2,500 on that card with a credit limit of $10,000, you've used 25% of your credit line. And you want to really have your utilization be relatively low. And I think on average, from what I've heard and read in the industry, that people who wish to lend you money would like to have your utilization across all of your revolving lines of credit, like your credit cards, for example, be roughly 30% of what your total credit limits are. And so just being very mindful about keeping those credit limits low is really, really important. And this is another piece. Only open new credit when you need it. And do not close unused credit cards. And it's in large part because that same conversation we've been talking about credit utilization, right? If you have, let's say across your particular cards, and in total, you have $50,000 as a credit limit. And one of those cards is $10,000. If you close one of those cards because you're not using it, you've now made your base go from 50,000 to 40,000. And so, but your actual credit used may not have changed. So by you changing the denominator and making that denominator smaller, you've actually increased your credit utilization, which could impair your credit limit. Again, people typically like to have you have 30%. If you close a card that's not used, you are affecting that. The other piece here too, though, is sometimes cards that are not used can be closed on your behalf. And so if you know there's a card that you're not really using, every now and again, put gas on it and pay that on time, just to keep that credit going. Again, you don't want to have anything be removed, but you also want to be mindful of the fact that utilization, even for credit card companies, is something that they do monitor and manage. And the other thing too is that you get a free credit report to check on an annual basis. So for me, I look at it like new year, new me. And I pull in January my credit report just to kind of look and see, make sure that someone isn't like, got a car on my name, or, opened a cell phone in my name, and those things have happened. And so this is your ability, again, to not put your head in the sand and be really, really honest about what your profile looks like. And if you see something on there that is not your debt that you've taken out, fight it. Reach out to these entities, be able to prove that that wasn't you. And in my experience, they've been quite responsive. But even in addition to your free credit report every single year, there are certain tools. Like I am a Capital One user. I'm a customer of theirs, and they have a program called CreditWise, which is a free service that's embedded in their app, that just allows you to monitor like what new requests and inquiries have been added. And if you know that that's an inquiry comes in and that was not you, it allows you to immediately flag and be able to address that sooner rather than later. So the key takeaways that I have here in terms of kind of like the full story, it's start today. Time is on your side, and time is such an important component to be mindful of when it comes to your financial health and performance. You want to set a routine. So now it's also an extension of time. You want to dedicate time to ensuring that you are really being responsible and serving yourself best. And the other thing too is you want to act, assess, adjust if you need to, and then repeat. And at the end of the day, like Morgan Freeman says, relax, you got this. So I'm going to now open it up. I know we've been chatting for a little bit, to open it up to any questions. And Carolyn, if you're there, let's get in.
I am. Thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation and brought out so many important points. And thank you for being willing to share your spreadsheets with us. I'm definitely going to share that information with our church family. So I wanted to see if anyone had any questions that they put in the chat. I want to see if there's any information in the chat, any questions that anyone had to ask in regards to personal finances. So let's see. So I have a question here. What is the best way to save, and how have you been motivated to save over the years?
Yeah. The savings for me has really just been, I mean, sometimes when you think about 9 months of putting away for an emergency fund, it can seem like such a huge item. Yeah. But I sometimes just cut them up in chunks. And so, you know, if I'm starting from when I was, and these are like principles that I learned from my parents, right. You know, it really is like, okay, if it's January, by March, can I have $500 saved up? Okay. Or, you know, okay. And then, or by July, can I have this amount of money saved up? And it really just reframes kind of short-term goals for yourself to really help you on a day in and day out basis. Just say, do I need to get that meal at Chipotle, or should I bring my lunch to work? Or do I need that Starbucks, or do I just like get a Keurig? You know, like it just really allows you to figure out how you are using your money, and in shorter chunks, really figuring out what really matters. I think it's so easy, especially in times like Amazon, right? Amazon makes it far too easy to be like, oh my gosh, I need this. Let me just search it and it's there in 2 days. Yeah. And then it feels like, oh, wow, that was so convenient, but that adds up. Yeah. And so being really, really mindful of like, what do I need and how do you save towards that? Yeah, I think smaller chunks are really, really important, and it allows you to kind of check yourself. I think with some of the small decisions you make, you know, day in and day out that add up over time.
Yeah, that's so important.
The other thing I will say, I want to add to that, keep yourself honest. And sometimes, again, I pay myself first, and how I do that in a lot of ways is I've linked my checking account to my savings account. And so I get paid once every 2 weeks. And on the day that I'm going to get paid, a set amount of money is going to come out of that account. And it's automatic. Yeah, and so I need to be mindful of it. Yeah, it's just like, it just goes out. Yeah. And it, to me, not unlike paying, you know, my television bill. That money's coming out, and that's what's happening.
Wow. So I have another question here. What about refinancing, and when is a good time? Sorry about that. No. And when is a good time to refinance one's home?
Oh gosh, now I have not refinanced a home. I'm actually in the process of thinking about trying to buy a home in the next year. You know, I will say from the conversations and things that I've read about, and so talk about using your community. I have used my community to really kind of assess some of these things. now is not a bad time to refinance your home, in large part because the interest rates are really, really low. Now, because a lot of banks have been giving out personal loans for a lot of businesses over the last few months, you want to really probably have a better luck with a bank that you already have a relationship with.
Right.
But interest rates now are really, really low. And a lot of people, specifically in March, the amount of influx that a lot of banks had for people doing refinance applications were through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because it created an opportunity. But again, if there's ever a time in which you can assess whether or not your interest is lower, you can get an interest that's lower than where you are. That's part of the financial equation here, right? And so if you can change that and reduce it, it changes how much money is going to your principal, and it reduces how much money is going to your interest, which basically helps pay off your actual loan principal sooner. So I say look into it now. Now's the time.
Now's the time. Okay. What is your opinion on Susu saving?
Ooh. Can I tell you? So it's a lot of conversations about susus right now. I think a lot of different cultures call it a lot of different things. Jamaica, I think we call it pardna. I think a lot of it is about trust and really trusting who's part of your susu, who's part of your pardna, right? The things that I really do like about it, and again, full disclosure, I have not done it. My parents have talked to me a lot about it in years and past in terms of like introducing me to the concept. I mean, from what I've heard, the great thing about it is that the tax implication for yourself is probably really low because it's not like any one person is giving you a gift, right? And so to kind of level set on that, if I were to buy you, Carolyn, a car, and I were to get you a car that was $10,000 in value, you don't have to pay taxes on that. I think the limit on an annual basis for, I think federal is $14,000. So you can receive a gift, my understanding, without having to pay taxes on that. And so when you have a susu and multiple people are giving you a gift, essentially, I think there is some tax relief that you get from that. Again, you should check with your financial advisors and get some guidance on that. But the benefit of that, I think, is that it can reduce your tax implication, that you don't have to worry about worrying about that for taxes. But the huge thing about it is, again, trusting the people that are part of your susu. If that money were to go away, is that your emergency fund? Is that, really thinking about your risk assessment and your risk tolerance and really being honest about that is important. But it sounds like, for a lot of people, that's how they have, been able to start businesses and really kind of reduce the amount of time for their savings, because it's collective savings and return on those things. And so I am pretty open-minded on a lot of ways in which that you think about funding the different kind of goals you have in your life and being honest about what those things are. And again, asking people, and not asking people leading questions, asking people to say, how do people in the susu get introduced? What's the process? What's their background? I think all of those things are really, really important to ensure that you're in a community that's like-minded.
Right. Yeah. So you don't stand the risk of someone running away or disappearing.
You could stand that risk, but at least you can, try to reduce the likelihood of that.
Right. Okay. I have another question. We have a few students who are getting ready to go to college. What is your take on student loan debt? And should they incur student loan debt? What other options do they have?
Yeah, I mean, student loans, I will say, and I'm not saying anything that smarter people than me haven't already kind of opined on and done a lot of research on. I think student loans are probably the next big crisis, not unlike how the real estate crisis was in 2008. We are really, really saddling young people up with just a huge amount of debt that is really forcing them to have to make decisions about which schools that they go to. It delays your ability to purchase a home later in life, things that are an asset and kind of appreciating assets in particular. Even though getting an education is an investment in yourself. And as a person who has done this twice, at schools that were not the cheapest of schools. I will tell you, it is a hard balance. It is a hard one to really strike. And when you are a young person, it's hard to really understand or really kind of appreciate whether or not you will get a true return on that investment. I will say, I think it is really, really important for people to really look at scholarships. I think we talk about that a lot. I don't know if there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of research and actually applying for them. For those of you who may even be in high school, I think we talk about like the PSATs as being something like this, your practice SAT. It's not.
Yeah.
If you do really, really well on your PSATs, it actually qualifies you for scholarships.
Yeah.
And so we need to think about them in a very different kind of way. But I will say I am a huge proponent of higher education. I do think that you should be very mindful and looking at your higher education as a business. And so, before you're going to schools, I would ask, like, how many students actually get filled on jobs on the back end of this? Is there a high percentage of students who are leaving schools without jobs? And what are the quality of those jobs, right? Are people really going and they're just taking minimum wage jobs? Nothing's wrong with that. But are they going into salaried roles? What are the industries that they're going in? Are those industries high performing and high paying industries? Those are the things that I think really allow you to assess whether or not your tuition that you are paying is going to likely give you a good return on your investment. Because I will say, we know in terms of practice and just data that if you go to college, your salary is tending to be higher, but it is with a huge, huge price tag attached to it. And I think we need to be a lot more honest about what that is and what really the return on investment is, because not all BAs or BSs are created equal. And we need to be really mindful of that. The other thing I will say, vote. There are a lot of people, granted, in the election, the candidacies now, things have changed, but we've been having a lot of conversations about student loan debt. And I think we need to, and it needs to change on the policy level. Otherwise, we're going to have to force it to change if people are defaulting on loans, and it really kind of impairs the financial industry, which I think it could.
It could, absolutely. I have another question regarding savings. What is your take on CDs as a way of saving? And if not, what are your recommendations?
You know what, I will say, I have not done a CD in a really, really long time, or certificate of deposit. So I'm gonna refrain from answering that question because I have not done a lot of research on that in the reality, in the near term. I will say I have really, really erred on the side of investing in the market. And, again, it can be risky. For me, it is a long-term play. And I do think that when you are thinking about the market, it does allow for you to, I think I'll stop there. I really am a big proponent of the market, not stock picking, but really a kind of big diversification of recognizing company performance.
Okay. I think those are all the questions that we have right now in our chat. But I want to say thank you so much for just sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us regarding finances. I know it can be a scary topic for people, but like you said, it's something that you just need to really jump into and really look at often, so you're not caught off guard in the future. So thank you so much. At this time, we're going to just close our program. I'm just going to say a closing prayer. Dear Father in heaven, God, we thank you so much for this evening's program. We thank you so much for Thea, who has shared what she's researched and her knowledge and her wisdom with us, and really help us put into perspective what we need to be doing when it comes to our finances. We ask that you will give us the grace and the help that we need in order to tackle our finances so that we can be better stewards for you. We thank you and we praise you, and we look forward to what you'll do for us and through us, using our finances as well. In your precious and most holy name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.